Hello, everyone. This is Dana and from NexGen, and welcome to Me Inc. Hi, everyone. This is what happens when you try to grab your notes to talk today about um, Who Stole Me. And where Who Stole Me came from was last week we talked about rental do's and don'ts. And specifically, we were talking about rental scammers, people that were doing things illegally to take your deposit and your application fee. So, not only are these scammers taking deposits and application fees, but they also could be doing what we call identity theft. So, in the beginning, we talked about the different types of identity theft. So, one of them that you're probably very familiar with is back in the day, and I am a boomer. So, back in the day, we only received a Social Security account number when we were working. And the reason we did that is because there was documentation that the Social Security Administration had to know, okay, this is how much money we're going to take to put aside for your Social Security. And so you had to have a number that identified you and how much was going to be taken. So now people are using it as a form of identification. So now children are getting Social Security numbers, and also, and of course, infants are getting Social Security numbers as well. So things are shifting because some of the older people will know that they were putting Social Security numbers on our checks. They were putting them on different things to differentiate you from someone else. So now that it's being used a little bit more nefariously, then we're not going to be publicizing our Social Security number because it'll cause problems. So the first one I'd like to talk to you about as far as identity theft is what we call new account fraud. And this is when they use someone else's identification information to get goods and services. And they usually get it from people that are in good standing, they have good credit. So to do this, the person would need the victim's social security number. And they would do that to open up a new utility bill, a cell phone bill, a credit card. And those are just examples of the things that they would use. And again, this is for someone that has a social security number and someone that has a good credit standing. And unfortunately, children don't have a bad credit standing usually. So some of the fraudsters would use people that they feel do not have a bad credit standing because it would be easier for them to get the goods and services. So that's what we call new account fraud. Then there is such a thing as account takeover fraud. And that's where the victim already has an account or they already have a credit card, and the thief uses that person's information, such as the credit card number, to get goods and services or to take money out of their bank account. So again, it can be used for something that's already existing, like a bank account. They can take money from that, or they can take it from a credit card. A third type of identity theft is what we call criminal identification. And this is when they commit the crime in the victim's name. And for example, let's say that they committed a crime and they have an identification that has the victim's identification, but it has the thief's picture. So it would look like the victim is the one that's getting arrested when it was actually the criminal. Then we have another form of identity theft, which I think is the most, even though all of them are bad, the ones that I'm talking about, this one I think is the more serious. And that's what we call medical identification um, theft. And this is where the person uses someone else's name and insurance information without the victim's knowledge or consent to get medical goods and services. Now, this is where it can get really, really dangerous. I'll give you an example. Let's say that the victim is not a diabetic, but the thief or the criminal is a diabetic and they are getting services or insulin treatments and those types of things because they're diabetic. Well, let's say that the victim gets into an accident and they're not able to ask them any questions. Well, if they look into their medical record, there is an assumption that that person is a diabetic. So they can inadvertently get inappropriate treatment, or the medical staff could be making life threatening decisions based on someone's fraudulent information in their medical record. Then we have what we call a business or commercial identification theft. And that's where the criminal will use the business name or even their clients' products and services under the business name. Now, this usually happens with someone who currently works at the company or that used to work at the company. So they have a way to get specific information that only someone that worked there would be able to get. And if they're currently there, they could probably hide it easier. Then we have what we call identity cloning. And that's where the criminal actually becomes the victim. And they are usually doing this when they are evading the law, they're evading child support, or sometimes they could be mentally ill. Now, there's this movie that I saw. It's called Identity Theft, and I think you can get it for free on the YouTube site to actually see it. And in the beginning of the movie, there is a young lady who is actually doing things that would make her susceptible to identity theft. For example, she went to the ATM machine and instead of properly destroying her receipt, she just balled it up and threw it in the trash can. There was different things that when you're watching it, you're like, oh, this is when she's going to get her identity stolen. This is when she's going to get it stolen. It wasn't until she actually, I guess, went to fill out an application for something. I guess it was a mortgage that she wanted to get. And what was happening is the person that actually worked there was having financially having financial difficulty and actually stole this woman's identity. So that falls in line with the business or commercial identity theft. So these are in the description, I have different information for you on what you can do. But before then, I wanted to add in some reasons why you want to protect your identity. This is important. It could be the difference between you keeping your job. If you have a job that requires a security clearance and for some reason you're a victim of identity theft, you want to make sure that that's taken care of. And as the case when I was talking about the medical identity theft, you can be seriously injured. And another thing, when I was telling you to look on the Social Security website, you want to check to make sure that that information is there as far as the amount of your wages. Because if someone is using your Social Security number, they may be using it for their wages. So you may see something that's not right. So you want to let the Social Security people know if there's something wrong. And I think that you have an opportunity to see it once you sign in at any time. So for Social Security, you want to go on the site and you want to review it. Some people could use your Social Security number to file for taxes. So you want to make sure that you pay attention. And if you suspect identity fraud or something going on, whether either it's yourself or maybe even your children, you want to let the IRS know as soon as possible. So if you run into a situation where you become a victim of identity theft, you want to make sure that one, if it's the medical theft, that you notify your insurance company as soon as possible. And usually, if you start seeing something in the mail of services that you did not receive, that's usually an indication that someone might be using your medical information. So you want to notify your insurance carrier. Another thing, if it's your credit card, of course, you want to notify the credit card company, notify the bank if that's appropriate. But one of the things that I've noticed that people don't do, or it's actually been reported, that people do not report it to the police. The reason why, there's a bunch of different reasons why you want to report it to the police. In addition to stopping the thief, you want to report it to the police because they're going to give you a case number because one, they'll have a record. Two, you may need to provide it to the insurance company or the credit bureaus to show that these are the steps that you have been taking to change that slide for you guys so you know what we're talking about, to make sure that you are doing the steps that you need to protect yourself for any further harm that's done. So again, if you look in the description, there's a lot of information for you to include how do you know if your personal information was compromised. Now, one of the things that I would strongly recommend is do not write down your social security number unless it's required. There's a lot of forms, as I said before, that was used back in the day, and it was used as a form of identification. A lot of times that information is not needed. For example, if you're going to your doctor's office and they have a number that's assigned to you, they don't necessarily need to have your social security number. And I've actually done this myself where I actually don't put it down and no one has questioned it. Also, you want to, now that we're in 2022, you also want to pay attention to social media. You don't want to put down your mother's maiden name. You don't want to put down your exact birth date because all those are identifiers that an identity thief can use to do the things that I talked about before. Also in the description, um, there's things that I said that you can do that you can minimize it. Again, don't keep your Social Security number on you. That's one. In case your wallet or your purse gets stolen, you want to make sure you check your mail to make sure that there's not something that you don't expect. You want to check your mail every day. As far as being online, you want to make sure that you change your password every 60 to 90 days. So those are some of the things that you can do to minimize your chance of being a victim. And also in the description, I also have, if you find out that you are a victim of identity theft, these are some of the things that you can do. So as I said before, I have a lot of the information in the description that can help you. And I hope that you are not a victim of identity theft. Now, this is something that a lot of people may not know. If you check with your homeowner's insurance or your rentals insurance, sometimes they have an identification, the ID theft rider on, or they can avail it to you if that's something that you would like. So that's something that you may not have to pay or pay a nominal amount. So these are some of the things that I wanted you to know as far as the different types of identity theft, what to do if you become a victim of identity theft, some of the things that you can do to minimize your chance of becoming a theft victim, and also what you can do, what you would know if what information you would need to know if your information would become compromised. I don't see any questions in the chat. But if you do have any questions after this video, please feel free to go ahead and put it in the comment section. And I do thank you for your time and have a great evening. And for my folks in the Washington, D.C. area, stay warm. Talk to you soon.